Good afternoon. Welcome to the FTD University webinar titled Reviving Sympathy Sales. Today, you will hear about the florist's shrinking share of the sympathy market and be presented with solutions to help you take charge and put new life into this industry tradition. FTD Education Consultant Jeff Corbin will be leading this informative webinar. Involved in the floral industry for over 30 years, Jeff brings a practical perspective of design and business to his presentations. As an active flower shop owner in Virginia, Jeff understands the current challenges facing the floral industry. Once Jeff is finished with his webinar, we will open the webinar up for questions. If you have a question, box on the upper right side of your screen. We will take the questions in the order they are received. Please feel free to submit your questions during the presentation, and we will hold them until the Q&A portion of the webinar. So without further ado, I would like to turn the call over to Jeff.
Yes, I'm here.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry there was some cutting in and out, Janet. Thanks, Janet. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad you've joined us today. As Janet mentioned, we will have a Q&A session after the program. Wanted to remind you, each slide is numbered. So if you have a question about a specific item, copy down that slide number so that we can make better reference back to it. That number is in the lower right-hand side of the slide. Also, my email is posted at the end. As always, feel free to write to me, and I'll help you out any way I can. Have you ever seen or been to a funeral where there were no flowers? I have, and I've got to tell you, it's a little bit unnerving. Having been in the industry for over 30 years, I remember when it wasn't uncommon to send 25 to 50 items to a funeral service. And you at least one piece for every service there was in your locality. Today, though, I feel lucky if we get about a half a dozen items going out to a funeral, and there's a lot of times there are multiple services going on that we never get anything for. Let's look at a simple fact. There are now more deaths occurring in the U.S. than ever before because of the aging population of the baby boomers. With all of these deaths, though, why aren't we seeing increased sales of sympathy flowers? We can speculate many reasons about the decline of sales, but I venture to say the number one reason we would select is the in lieu of movement, and that's what I call it, using that phrase. The phrase has now been around for pretty much a full generation, if not greater, and it's created a mindset that flowers are necessary during the times of grief. Look at this example of the picture here I found on Facebook, and they raised the question, the one funeral service tradition I just don't understand anymore is what? And the first answer on there is the necessity of flowers. When signs like this start popping up, it tells us we, as flower sellers, need to take notice of what's going on. But in order for us to discuss the big picture, let's step back and look at how we've traditionally received sympathy sales and the challenges they now present to us. Regular customers have been and will continue to be the lifeline of most small businesses. Our problem here lies in the fact, though, that so many of our regulars who were in the habit of sending flowers have passed on themselves. Those that haven't passed on are many times on fixed incomes and opt out not to send anything. The younger customers, they don't even realize that they're under the influence, so to speak, of in lieu of, and they don't see the point of sending flowers. WOM, or word of mouth, is always a strong form of advertising for us. However, people have to be motivated to send flowers in order for word of mouth to be effective for them to get into your store. Or to better explain, a person may love your store, but if they don't feel the need to send flowers for death, their feelings of your store won't create a sale. Now, the most common approach is the WAS approach. That's the wait and see. It's also known as pretty much do nothing. Sit around and see what orders come into your store. Now the fourth one is the funeral home referrals. In the good old days, it was referred to as getting in good with a funeral home. It's extremely good method, extremely popular, but being the main floral provider to a well-established funeral home can also have some issues, because if you bank on them for too long and they switch to someone else, the infrastructure of your business could be damaged. The relationship with the funeral home was good, so what is anything bad about it? The one that I just mentioned, that you could not become the preferred florist and lose a lot. But what we need to be realize or be aware of right now is funeral homes, like florists, are changing hands right now. The old guard, so to speak, are either getting out of it, passing on, selling it, whatever. The younger generation of funeral homes don't always see the traditional way of doing business that we've been accustomed to. Their loyalty of the traditional independent florist is diminishing as they're being wooed and swayed by outside vendors. These two sites I want to mention and put these down as your homework of going and further reading about these sites. They are strongly vying for funeral home attention right now, because what they're doing, they're offering free websites to the funeral homes. And the enticement is, and I'll point out something on these screenshots, that the funeral home can, let me get my marker going here, is that the funeral home can make money off of their website. More specifically, they're saying that they can make it off of the flowers that a florist sells. Here's another one that I have specifically, I want to share an example with. I found one of this service here, Consolidated Funeral Service, with one of our local funeral homes that's linked in with another local florist. I went on there and placed an order. It was a $50 plant and $10 delivery, so I was charged $60. When I found out what florist it was going to, I called them and told them why I was doing it, that I wanted to know logistics. They told me that in a couple of weeks they would get a check in the mail for this $60 order for a total of $35. And I said, okay, so that's basically, they told me they were giving away 30%, or they were only earning 70%. I asked about the $10 delivery fee. They told me that they never saw the delivery fee. So in essence, a $60 order, the florist is receiving $35 or 60%. So we need to be aware of filling any orders like this through these services, because we may be getting the short end of the stick also, as well as the consumer spending the money. Here, Funeral One is another company, and again, it's worth reading their information, but very similar philosophy. And again, I want to show this one, that same thing. Many funeral firms are earning 25% commission on gifts and flowers that are being sold through their funeral home website. Not trying to badmouth these companies, because they're out trying to make a living too, but if we want to be sharper business people, we need to be aware of what our competition is. Now, with that being said, let's look at what we can do to make some positive changes that benefit us. First is to improve your relationship with your funeral home. Second is advertise directly to the consumer. And third evaluate your product offerings. First, let's talk a little more about our funeral homes. I'm breaking this section into 4 points. The first is communications. Talk with your funeral homes. Ask questions. Provide them with information about us. If you already have a good working relationship with the funeral home, it's much easier to communicate with them. Of course, you will want to discuss the in lieu of phrase, but we have to be subtle in doing it. Many funeral homes truly don't realize that in lieu of is a derogatory term. They think they're providing a positive service to the family by suggesting it. Now, scheduling a meeting to discuss this doesn't always give you the best results. They'll be cordial, they may give you time and lip service, but many times nothing changes. I think what we need to realize that this is an ongoing process, just a little bit at a time, or those baby steps. A thing that I have found a little more response from is literally dropping them a thank you note. When you see an obituary that gives an alternative phrase of flowers, in the sense of, while flowers are appreciated, friends may also give contributions to ABC. It's not completely knocking out flowers, it's just opening the door for other alternatives. But this is a positive step, and by rewarding the funeral director with just a note of confidence saying, hey, we noticed, thank you for keeping flowers in the picture, it may then give you another chance for a little more dialogue on this subject. I've also found in our area, instead of just dropping a note in the mail, attach it to a box of cookies. They tend to like food as much as the florists do. SAF and of inlieuofflowers.org are both websites that list alternative phrases that you can share with your funeral homes. And these 2 websites will again be posted at the end of the webinar, so you can copy that down then. Another thing for the funeral home is just ask simple questions. What can you do to help them? And what do they expect of you? Realize the more valuable you are to them, the more they will see value in you. Another area to improve funeral home relationships is being aware of how image conscious the funeral home is and up our image to match theirs. I've raised questions before of how many times have you seen a dirty hearse? General rule of thumb, not many, if ever. They don't keep their vehicles dirty. Why should we? If they are a business partner with someone, they want that business partner to look as good as they do. So in that vein, dress appropriately. Blue jeans and pullover shirts may not be appropriate for the funeral home. Dirty vehicles are never needed. Broken, damaged vehicles are not acceptable. We have an image just as valuable as theirs. Onto the subject of attitude, we always need to maintain a positive attitude. Even if they may be griping about having 40 funerals in 40 days, we need to remain positive and put a positive spin on it of saying, you know what, but we are grateful for all those 40 family funeral pieces that you have given us. Thank you, we appreciate it. Always remain positive and grateful. If they are selling flowers and giving you orders, help them in the process by keeping your selection guides current and keeping them clean. Take a look at them when you're at the funeral home and see, are pages bent? Is the laminate coming apart? Are they priced properly and accurately? Things do wear out over time, and in the big scheme, it's a nominal cost to replace them. Also, as a side note for your information, you can buy funeral selection guides that are in your, like in your countertop guide. You can buy those from Marketplace and share those with your funeral homes. Also, from a little marketing point of view, when you do give them selection guides, make sure on every page you put a label with your shop name, phone number, and website on it. That way, even if they should select nothing from that guide, your name is still in their mind. Always be reliable and punctual. If they want it delivered by 3, have it delivered by 3, not 3:15. It's not fair to them to be late. Even if you're 5 minutes late, have the courtesy to pick up a phone and call them. Again, it's just good business practice. The bottom line, we need to make them look good so that they are proud to work with us and proud to give us referrals. The third topic I want to talk about, and I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but we need to evaluate our work quality. Product is oftentimes being sent out that should have been thrown in the trash a few days prior. That hurts every florist when one florist does that. Also, I've seen where items are arriving at the funeral home, they're physically off balance, they're falling over. I've seen where funeral baskets or fireside baskets will split in half because of poor mechanics or something going too wrong in there. And while it doesn't look good for the family that ordered those flowers, worse yet, members of the funeral home have to clean up a mess that could have been avoided. When they're cleaning up messes after us, can you see why they would promote in lieu of? They're not getting paid for the flower cleanup, and yet they're having to clean up after us. Not good. While we're talking about damages, let's talk about water. A lot of funeral homes will pour the water out of funeral baskets before they get in there, and that's their business. Worse yet is when standing sprays and standing crosses, standing wreaths are sent over, and they've not been allowed to drip properly. I've walked into places and seen baby diapers sitting on the floor to collect dripping water from a florist item. That's not a good image either, not to mention you don't want to damage carpet in a funeral home. So plan accordingly. If you're delivering glass vases or set containers, always have the delivery person take a clean towel with them and wipe the bottoms off to avoid any watermarks. Styles and trends, keep it modern. I tend to think funeral designs or the funeral work overall is probably the most traditional segment of our industry, but we still need to be aware of new trends and styles to keep our image looking fresh. And that's all I'm going to say there. Let's look at the fourth topic of improving our funeral home relationship. This one can hit some hot spots with people, but it has to be included to give a fair representation. Origination fees, or do you remember when these were called kickbacks? Do you or don't you give it? I'm not going to say whether you need to or you don't. That's something you have to evaluate in your business model to see if you need to explore this. I was not always a fan of it, but I once spoke with a shop who gave 30% origination fees. And I was floored. I was thinking, and I asked him, I said, how can you afford to do it? He said it brought him in dollars a year in business, so he wasn't sure if he wasn't sure if he could not do it. So when you look at it that way, I can understand the point of view. It was also brought to my attention, which makes very good sense. When you see it as an origination fee, the funeral home is selling the product, they are collecting the money, and they're paying you in a timely manner. You may want to view an origination fee as just a part of doing business, and you need to recognize this cost in your markup of your retail product. Now, and back to what we said about the websites, the free websites, they are pretty much putting an origination fee in there, and that's how they're selling their websites. You take our free websites and we can help you make money on the products that you're selling. Well, this is where we can beat those website people. We can also offer some employee benefits. For every employee of the funeral home, you could make it as part of the deal. If you're working with us and helping us sell our product and sending work our way, we will give each of your employees a discount card. For every purchase they make, they get 20% off. Now, what does this do? Don't be thinking, oh, but I'm losing more money each time by doing this. You may actually be increasing sales overall by doing this. Realize not just the owner or the owner's family is answering the phone at that funeral home, correct? It's going to be employees. So if a consumer calls and said, I want to send flowers for the Smith service, what florist do you recommend? An employee may have a personal preference of another florist, but if you have won them over with an employee discount card, they're going to be more likely to put your name out there. And I also just find it's a little more of a grassroots approach that everybody sees the funeral owners, funeral homes are making money. The employees may feel that they're not, but this way, by getting a discount from you, you are showing them a little more respect in the organization. While I do believe good relationships with funeral homes are crucial, I think advertising directly to the consumer is our lifeline in the long haul. Funeral homes can influence people, but consumers who have a connection with your business, loyal customers, they will often speak up and overrule the suggestion of a funeral director. So say if your local funeral home is saying people, oh, let's go to ABC Florist, the widower sitting there may go, no, I want Mary's Flower Shop because that's where we deal. Direct consumer advertising can help strengthen that bond. Think about a parallel situation. Have you recognized how the pharmaceutical companies now advertise directly to the public so we as patients request their products from the doctor? It used to be the doctor would prescribe. Now we're asking for prescriptions. We need to put ourselves in the same situation with flowers and the consumer. Advertising for the funeral business should always be a continuous process, and it should be kept low-key so you don't look like an ambulance chaser. Our first topic in advertising is what I call statement stuffers or pamphlets, for those of you who don't send out statements anymore. Tasteful pamphlets can be given to clients by handing them out, mailing them, or maybe even leave a stack at your funeral homes and see if they'll share with the families. Here, McAdams Florist down in Victoria, Texas, has created a specific one for themselves. They've personalized it. But generic pamphlets can also be obtained from SAF. Keep that in mind. Billboards are also a very effective form of advertising. Now, realistically, I don't see billboards used a lot for the floral industry, or even advertising any type floral products, much less geared specifically toward funeral homes or funeral business. However, if you see vacant sitting around your town, call the company. They may be in the mood to cut some deals, and depending, you can evaluate what your traffic count is and what the monthly fees are. You may find it to be very good for you and have a very positive return. This board here shown as an example was used by the funeral home, and it used a good amount of humor to help advertise the uncomfortable topic of death. And I want to throw a bit of trivia at you. Do you realize that Americans spend more time planning a 2-week vacation than they do planning their own funeral? We as Americans, I'm sure we all realize we're going to die, but we don't discuss it as much as we should. We always leave it for our loved ones. So again, don't take it too seriously in your advertising. Keep it lighthearted. Put a smile on your face with it. Put a smile on their face, pardon me. Another venue that works to our advantage right now is social media. It can be the perfect place to showcase unique sympathy work. And remember, when you do social media, Facebook here specifically, it's best used as a tool that keeps your business name out in the minds of your fans. You don't want to use it as a sales guide or as a sales pamphlet all the time. If so, your fans will tend to block you, and even though you may think you have 1,000 fans, if 900 of them have blocked your post, you're really not being effective. What you want to do is always keep your messages fun, positive, interesting, and light. People use social media as a diversion for their enjoyment, not as an advertising platform. So you want to engage them and then win them over being your customer. When listing or showing funeral work like this, be wary of mentioning the deceased people's names. Remain generic, and that way you're not offending anyone. In addition to social media, you want to keep your shop's website current. It's also becoming more popular that you even set up a full website dedicated to sympathy work to make your shop look like it's more specialized in the area of sympathy flowers. Say, for example, you are in, let's say, Chicago Florist. You may want to set up a second website as chicagosfuneralflorist.com. It could be linked to your regular website as well as the external link, but only thing on there is sympathy work. It makes you look like you're specialized. Do want to mention, and right here is what I want to focus on, regardless of the type of website you have, whether it's a everyday site that lists all the categories of occasions, or if it's specifically a funeral site, you want to take the time to have informational pages for all of the facilities that you service, all of the funeral homes, mortuaries, that sort of thing. Why? What it does, if someone is looking for ABC Funeral Home, Smith Service, when they list ABC Funeral Home and you have information on your website about it, chances are your florist page will also come up to them and could help trigger them make a purchase from you. Here I'm using McAdams as an example again. They dedicate a full page to the Bearfield Funeral Home in Victoria, Texas. That's where they're located. They've done this for every funeral home to which they deliver. And it's just what I said. It gets them more recognition or more of an opportunity to be seen by potential consumers. Now, another thing you can do is, or another way of having information, is dedicating one page and listing all of the funeral homes' names, list their addresses, their phone numbers, that sort of thing, all on the page. Both types of pages can help you get your business brought up in the searches, but I tend to think a dedicated page for each facility, while it's more work, is going to carry a little more weight in search engines right now and get you a little better return. I want to note here that I stole this page shot from Beniva's down in Sarasota, Florida. So thanks, Art. We appreciate that. Lastly, in the seminar today, let's look at the products we could be offering to make our businesses stand out amongst our competition. I think often we fall into a rut of offering the baskets, sprays, and vases because that's what we've always done, and it's easy to sell, it's easy to do. We're in our comfort zone, and it worked well for several decades. But I now think we need to look at our current demographics and look at how sympathy or how funeral services have changed. Nowhere yet have I really mentioned cremations. We used to use cremations as an excuse of why we were failing in funeral work, why we were slacking in funeral work. Maybe that's some, but I don't believe that's a valid excuse. With the higher number of cremations that we're seeing, traditional funeral items are no longer appropriate. i.e., if Uncle Johnny died and he's been cremated and there will be no internment of his ashes, why would you want to send a standing spray to that service? It's not appropriate. At that point, pretty much all items are going to be home sympathy styling or more church-related items. We also need to realize that there is the large group of younger clients who are not in the habit of sending flowers. However, if they get the opportunity to see something unique, or something that sparks their interest, they're going to be more inclined to buy into it and make a purchase. Here's two examples of non-traditional floral tributes. One on the left was for the gardener, and it includes a keepsake garden statuary. The one on the right was done for a cake maker. And both are a little out of the ordinary, and they both capture positive attention for sending flowers when someone walks in the funeral home and sees them. Both are suitable for either a traditional service or cremation. And also think about it, both of these would get a lot of attention and traffic if they were posted on social media. On other products, we're all familiar with sending plants to a funeral service. But let's close our eyes for a minute, and we're going to think outside of the box of peace lilies and dish gardens. I promise you there's a lot of other plants out there besides those two varieties. People love, go ahead, open up your eyes. People love blooming plants. They look alive. And it's also an alternative gift for those people who don't like to send flowers because they just die. Doesn't that tear you up? The flowers just die and they're sending them to a funeral. Okay, we'll stop there. Let's take the plants one step further and consider adding perennials, shrubs, and trees to our product line. White dogwoods are very popular up in this area because it's a state flower and it's beautiful when it's blooming in the springtime. And look here, I'm going to get you a website name. It's called seedsoflife.com. The two photos on the right are from their site. I want you to see how simply they are wrapped at the base for presentation, just put into burlap and tied with a simple bow. And you're thinking, well, Jeff, you're saying we need shrubs, we need perennials, we need trees. We don't have place to keep all of this. The beauty of these items is you find a garden center or a home center that stocks good, fresh product, and kind of keep in your mind what inventory they have. Buy the items as you need it, much like when you buy fruit for fruit baskets. When someone orders, and maybe you want to choose 5, 6 products. In the springtime, blooming rosebush is always very popular. You could come up with a 1-gallon plant, 1-gallon tree, or a 5-gallon tree. I don't think you want to do a 20-gallon tree. Somebody's going to have difficulty delivering that. But choose a few items and offer it. It may take off for you. It may be a slower item. But I think in time you would see more people could respond to it. And it's one of those items you need to publicize it regularly. That would be a good social media mention of, we now have plants as an alternative to fresh flowers. Want to go one step further with this idea? Whereas Seeds of Life, you'll notice when you look on that site, they ship these items to the families. We, as a local business, can add further value-added service to this product. We can deliver this item for $50. For an additional $24.99, we can go to their home and plant this item for them as well. You may not want to get into it, but we have that option, and it also provides the consumer another reason for shopping locally versus shopping on the web, or a distant company, I should say. Another line of products is to explore is what I call the memory gifts. These include angels, wall plaques, garden plaques, picture frames that have little sentimental expressions in them, blankets or throws as shown over to the right. And I don't want to finish the program without mentioning another type of sympathy segment to be aware of also, pet sympathy. This, or with pet sympathy, that's where you can really sell the garden plaques, as there are several vendors who specialize in the outdoor stones and plaques for pets, usually relatively inexpensive, but the pet funeral, pet cemetery, and pet sympathy is a growing region. Blankets and throws, well, and with all of this, I would say I think it's very regional. Some areas go gangbusters with these items. Another part of the country may do nothing, or one may go very well with a blanket. Someone else may do nothing with a wall plaque. So test out your market and see. If it's a totally new product for you, have patience. Don't expect an item to take right off and go. It takes time to publicize it. It takes time for the consumer to need it. And remember too, many times funeral work is traditional and a slow-moving segment. We carried blankets 5 years ago and they didn't move all that well. What we're finding, we're now getting more calls to it and starting to restock them again. So again, don't know if we were ahead of the curve, if it's a fact that they now realize that we have them, even though we don't, but we'll be getting them back in. So toy with your product mix. Don't get discouraged right off the bat. Continue to reevaluate it. The last product I want to discuss, food. Don't let this slip out of your reach. Whether you realize it or not, funeral food is a big business in a lot of areas. There are even caterers who specialize in doing food for after the burial. Why can't we offer food also? Most of us have been doing fruit baskets ever since we've been open, so it's very similar to that. Hook up with a local bakery or deli or grocery store who offers food trays, food platters, whether they're fruit trays, cookie trays, meat and cheese, bread, whatever. Let them do all the prep work. It's in a sealed container. You pick it up, wrap it in a bow, and send it on its way. There should be no health department issues with this since you're buying a prepared product and redelivering it. However, to be safe, depending upon your locality, make a quick phone call just to cover yourself. In addition to food items, let's think about add-on products that could be of value at that time. What else do you need when you're having a funeral or a group of people in your home to eat? Think about the paper products, utensils, maybe chips, soft drinks, a wide variety of items. People who usually purchase food items are those who are pretty much out of town and they wish they could be there with that family and they're willing to go the extra mile to make their presence known. So you're providing them a huge service and they usually don't mind paying for it. I do want to give it to inlieuofflowers.org or .info, either way you can get to the site, and to Society of American Florists for the information that they've provided as well. I encourage all of you all to visit both of these sites and see what information is on there. Just their list of in lieu of phrases is well worth the visit. And again, on in lieu of, don't get discouraged. Just take baby steps. If you have questions, feel free to email me. And remember, this presentation will be available for viewing again at the above website address. At this time, I'd like to pass the microphone back over to Janet and see if we've got some questions coming in.
Jeff, thank you very much for sharing a lot of great information with us today. We are now open for questions. So if you have a question, simply type it in the question box on the upper right side of your screen, and we'll take the questions in the order that they are received. We do have a question from Tim. He said there are companies that preserve wedding flowers. One he knows of has provided them with information on preserving sympathy flowers. What's your thought on that?
Go for it. I would talk to them and see what it takes. Going back to what they do with wedding flowers, too often on the wedding end of it, brides would call us 2 days after the wedding and go, hey, I hear you can dry it. What do we need to do? And they didn't realize you needed to make pre-arrangements and have that little styrofoam box shipped in, have it in early and keep your bouquet in the cooler and do all of that. If they would give you some point of purchase information and you can make a commission on doing it, I would say offer it. Because I don't know now, have you seen too where funeral homes are offering jewelry? When your loved one passes, they will take a finger imprint and they can do the rings in silver and gold. They'll do necklaces. They can add a ruby to it. Many different variations. So I'd say investigate it. Give it a try.
All right. You said a statement more than a question, but she's really enjoyed your webinar, and she just wanted you to know that. We also have a question from Frank. He wants to know where he can get pictures of funeral flowers to use on his website.
Great question, Frank. Number one, try your selection guide from FTD. You can purchase those, and you should be getting a disc also of your products. As long as you are a current member, you can use those products, and you do have to use the same names as FTD has provided them because they're all copyrighted items, but those are are yours to use. There are also other third-party companies such as John Henry that will just make up photographs, and or their sympathy books are on disc as well, so you can purchase them, and that gives you the license to put them on your website. Sarah, thank you for your statement also. I appreciate it. I'm glad you were with us today.
All right, we've got another question from Greg. What do you think of sending letters to funeral homes asking them to delete the phrase "in lieu of"?
I think you would be met with resistance. And I have to be careful how I say this because I don't want to be confrontational. I don't think we need to be. But I think funeral directors can be as strong-minded as florists. And I think by saying don't use it, they're going to continue. They're going to say not pleasant things about you, and we will do it the way we so please. I've got a good friend who's a funeral director, and he and I have spoken about this on and off for 3 or 4 years. He was out about 6 weeks ago, and we were having dinner again, and we were talking about it. And he goes, but it's not a bad term. It does a good service for the family. And it really dawned on me, it's not ill intentions on his part. He truly thinks he's doing a service because that term has been around for so long. Everybody now thinks, oh, that's just a part of how we do it. So to ask them to stop or to tell them to stop, I don't think it's going to be effective. I think getting them a list of those phrases that say, here are alternatives to blocking out flowers may help you get your foot in the door a little better. Does that help?
All right, we've got a Paulette. She was suggesting maybe sending a plant or a fresh flower arrangement to the secretarial staff at the funeral home for having to call them all the time for information on services. It's kind of a thank you and a continuing to make positive steps in the relationship that you talked about.
I think that would be a wonderful idea. And I don't think you can ever go wrong by saying thank you enough. We use food down here a lot, but to the secretarial staff, by all means, do that. At Christmas time, take them things. All the time with services, yes, they're very important to you. Stay in their good graces.
All right, we've got a question from Dolores. She said, our funeral sales remain steady, but we've lost our home sympathy sales where they deliver sympathy flowers to a person's home. Mm-hmm. Any tips on reviving those sales?
No, that's perplexing to me. Except in the fact, no, you've really floored me. Or are you encouraging more? Is there less delivery fee if they go to the funeral home? Or is it people are choosing, say, plants or other non-floral items to go to the funeral home, so that's why those things aren't going to the house? Food items would definitely go to the house. Giftware can go either place. And I guess my question, if your sales are remaining good, I wouldn't lose a lot of sleep over it if you're still maintaining. To me, it's easier to drop 10 pieces off to the funeral home than to run one out to a house and one here and there. But no, to answer your question, no, I don't know things you could do, or unless you just run little advertisements on the sympathy pages on websites and in your newspaper.
A combo question. Amy and Greg have similar questions, so I'll kind of give you both together. Amy's, how do you approach a funeral director if they have a preferred florist? She said their preferred florist dresses unprofessional, but her husband is the town mayor, and Greg's is not as specific, but he's just wondering how do they break in when funeral directors use only specific suggestions.
And I'm right there with both of you. I've been here for almost 25 years, and I'm working with just one funeral home right now out of 8. And there's a long-standing where the others deal. I am always on my best behavior, and I go out of my way, and I hope one day when something may not happen well, and they're looking for other alternatives, they will keep us in mind for always having been positive to them. Does that, it's kind of like you're just going to, I fully understand where the funeral home comes from. If nothing is broken, why change it? They have good loyalty to that shop. However, if they change hands, or if that florist should change hands, or they start seeing a need to explore other alternatives, you need just to be there, and having always been a positive influence, you hope that they looked. But I would still take them selection guides. I've gone as far as purchasing the delivery cubes and giving each one of those to the funeral homes, also making sure our name was on the bottom of each of it. I try to help them and show them things. If there's a large funeral and we do get the cover, we will also offer to take things to the gravesite for them, so it frees up their people. And then just drop them a letter and say, would you be willing to sit down and have a conversation of how we could better serve you? We respect you as a local business. We would like to have a stronger partnership with you.
All right, we've got another good tip from Penny. She said they did start seeing increased sales when they started their local funeral home employees during the holiday season and their birthdays. So.
Oh, I like the birthday part too. That's very good. I think it's very crucial. It's, again, we're a smaller area, so our funeral homes range from 6 employees up to, I think, 20. It's important to make all of the employees to feel a part and to feel special. If you're just showing partiality to the owners, I think there's going to be some resentment there. Good
All
feedback.
right. Yeah, thanks. Tim has a question about the ribbons that go on the caskets and the standing sprays. He said he's only found one location that sells the printer for them. Do you know of where the best place is to buy these printers? And also, what is your thought on handwritten ribbons as long as the penmanship is acceptable?
Well there, now you're talking. Do you know FTD has these printers? Okay, I didn't hear anything back. But they do, they had the printers. I think they will do payment terms as well. Your question on handwritten ribbons. Use a gold marker and with good block penmanship. And again, I think that's acceptable also. Depends on how much you're charging for this, or if it's just kind of included.
All right.
Whereas
Yes.
Yes? Hello?
Oh, no thing. I thought you were done. I'm sorry, Jeff. I was just going to let Tim know that, yes, Marketplace sells the Fiorillo ribbon printer with various colors of ribbons and things. You can, of course, then buy that through Marketplace and put that on the 3-month payment plan as well.
And also, if you are purchasing a ribbon printer, I think you need to start charging for your ribbons on your baskets to recover the cost. But also you can remarket that for high school homecomings, proms, beauty pageants. Use it outside of the Sympathy arena as well. Now it's your turn, Janet.
All right. Jason is asking if there are websites where he and his designers can read more about sympathy trends.
Google it. There are funeral director sites, and depending upon what phrases you Google, you can come up with different things. There's the Funeral History Museum down in Houston that shows a few things. More current trends, though, I think would be trying to get access to the funeral directors magazines and then start looking at our industry pictures. I'd be more curious to know when you say trends what you're referring to. Design trends or business trends, marketing trends, purchasing trends.
All right, we've got a question from Jill. She wants to know what you do when a customer insists on sending a cemetery type arrangement to a funeral service when there isn't going to be a burial.
Good question, Jill, because we get plagued with that and we don't want to lose a sale. We try to nicely educate them that there is no internment and that the funeral home has requested that all items be made into a home sympathy arrangement. If that does not work, then we accept the order and we just let the funeral home know we could not get a second choice on this. It's that simple. We try, but we won't lose a sale because of it.
All right, Kelly is asking how much commission she should give to a funeral home for referring orders to her shop.
Good question, Kelly, and I think it depends on what you come up with your funeral home. I've seen some funeral homes that just say we don't want any because we just want a good relationship and we're willing to work with you. Others say 10 is good, but what I'm seeing now with these free websites and other outside sources, it's not uncommon to go 20, 25, even 30%. With that, though, I would tend to set up some ground rules of payment terms. And here we're very fortunate that funeral homes pay promptly, but I've known others that funeral homes wanted to say, well, we will pay you in 90 days. If we're giving you 30%, we think we should have payment within 10 days of invoice or 10 days of every service. So play the game and see if you can get by with 10 or 15. See if you need to sweeten the deal with 20 and as mentioned, you need to be aware of how much this is costing you, and it needs to be worked into the overall retail selling price.
All right, we've got one last question here. Aaron wants to know if you sell a lot of food for funerals.
It comes and goes. We've been offering it 2.5, 3 years. Some months we will sell 2 to 4 items, and then we'll go a couple of months with selling nothing. We can go with a $50 meat tray to where I've seen $200 orders of do meat, cheese, bread, XXX, and they will build it up. So there's no rhyme or reason. But what I have detected is the consumer for this is generally out of town and not able to make it. So they want to be known and they appreciate your service and are willing to spend the money for it. Don't be discouraged of, well, I know Ms. Smith won't buy this because she can see it at Kroger's here in town. Ms. Smith is not going to be your customer for this. It's going to be somebody who can't make it here, and they're willing to pay for your services.
All right. Greg wants to know if you have a food license.
We do not. Because, again, we don't make anything on premise. We are reselling.
Good point. We've got another quick tip from Amy. She said she works with local funeral homes and offers to pick up any flowers that aren't being taken home by the family. That way the funeral home doesn't have to get rid of them and she gets back the containers.
Okay.
So definitely a good tip, Amy.
That and I would go one step further, Amy. Give the flowers away to funeral homes or hospitals. Go ahead and salvage your containers, just so no one can ever say, oh, they are recycling those flowers and reselling. You don't want your good deeds to be misconstrued.
All right, and Tim wants to know, what is your markup percentage on the food trays?
Tim, good question. We do at least 100%, but here's the catch. If we're paying something at 25, then yes, we're going to sell it at 50. But then once we're already there picking that up, say you're getting a meat tray, but then if you want a bread tray and we're paying $12 for it, we will only charge like $19. If you, as you buy more items, prices will drop. I think that's fairness of down to about a 35–40% markup, because that first item is paying for that markup or paying for your overhead cost of going to get it. Paper plates and things of that nature, we can generally double on. If we do soft drinks, we can maybe at most get a 50%. And if you want to know more about that, Tim, feel free to email me. I'll be happy to share things with you.
All right, we've got one final tip from Eva. She said to combat in lieu of, they use the slogan, sympathy without flowers is like a life without friends. She said it sends a positive message.
That is very good. That's a wonderful comment.
All right, well, let's close things up now. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. If you missed a portion of this webinar or you would like to view it again, replay will be available at FTD University online later this week. As Jeff mentioned, the webinar materials are available at ftdi.com. Just click on the university logo on the bottom of the homepage, and then click through to the webinar series page. Of course, as always, we will be sending you a survey to gather your feedback on today's webinar. So please complete this very brief survey to help us improve future webinars and other education programs for you. The next FTD webinar is scheduled for Tuesday, February 25th. Derek Myers from Crockett Myers and Associates will show you how to empower and motivate your employees to reach for and exceed your company's vision, thereby creating the A-Team. Registration will be available, so be sure to register as soon as possible to reserve your spot. Again, thank you, Jeff, so much for sharing a lot of great information on how to take charge of the Sympathy sales in our local market. This concludes FTD's webinar, Reviving Sympathy Sales. Thank you.